Yo guys, what's up? Kevin here. It's been 2 years since my last Vsynth release, so I'm really excited to show you all what's new in version 1.5. I'm not gonna go through all the new stuff. I'm just gonna focus on the 25 plus modules for vector synthesis, that is for drawing graphics in analog vector displays, oscilloscopes, modified CRTs, and even lasers, but I haven't tried that, so at your own risk. You might have seen the alpha version of these modules in my presentation at Vector Hack Festival and Music Hackspace. This is an updated version of that, obviously with new modules, consolidated user interface, and general improvements. You will need a sound card or an audio device with DC coupled outputs, and well, the oscilloscope or the vector display, the Vectrex, whatever you are using as your final output. I'm using the Presonus Studio 26C and the Leader LBO 51MA right now. So yeah, as you can see, I already have one patch running. It's the Raster Plus Outlines. And yeah, this is how patches look. We have previews, you have names that you might be familiar with, like displacement or outline, edge detector, right? But the way this works is with audio, so you have to be paying attention to different things now. So yeah, let's just start a patch from scratch, and I hope you like it. In an unlocked and empty patcher, right click, paste from Vsynth, and choose the fifth option, Vector Default Patch. This will add all the modules you need to first calibrate the system. You will need to go through this process once, and then you can just work freely. The thing is that since you're going to be using a different sound card and probably a different display, you will have a different default setting in the output. So we first need to calibrate that in order to forget about that and keep working. So let's do that. I go into the NGS icon here in the 3-channel output and double checking that the sound card is your output device and that the sample rate is 192 kilohertz. So now we did that, before turning audio on, let's turn the render on and also the 3-channel output. And I'm not getting anything. And that's because I have the intensity of my scope completely down. So if I turn it up, I'm seeing this at least, which is obviously not what I'm sending. I'm sending a grid generator, and actually, because the 3-channel output already has a preview, so if I click that arrow, that's what we should be seeing, which is a grid and then a vertical sine wave coming from the polarizer waveform generator scrolling to the right. And I'm gonna add also here another preview for the polarizer, so we can check that out. Nice. So let's see what we have here in the 3-channel output, because I obviously getting the X channel. So in my case, I have my X channel, which is the first arrow, in the channel 3. I have the Y channel in channel 4 of the sound card, and then brightness is channel 1. So that's it. And everything is going kind of crazy because the intensity of the scope it's up, and if I'm modulating brightness, it should be completely down. But still, I'm not getting exactly what I'm seeing in my preview here. So there's something going on in the brightness channel. Obviously, if you don't have a brightness channel, you won't even be seeing that. You will just be seeing the grid, right? Which is also great. Like if you don't have the brightness channel, the C channel, you can just forget about it and work with XY, which you can do a bunch of things like displacement. Like we're gonna go through this in a sec, but you can still work without the brightness. I just love it, so all this video is gonna be with brightness modulation. So I'm gonna turn it on again from the 3-channel output. I'm gonna turn it down from the scope. I'm gonna fix the focus, and yeah, there's still something wrong there with the C channel, and it's basically that it's unsynced, so we need to compensate that with a delay, and that's why in the 3-channel output you have a delay number box next to the brightness, which you can also control from here, which is kind of cool. So yeah, in my case the delay it's around 18, so you will need to find a number here, okay? So like move this number box until you see something like that. And actually, you know, something that helps a lot for calibration is using a circle. So I'm just gonna turn the polarizer slider all the way to the right and double click on the speed knob so I stop it. So this is unsynced completely, or maybe how you're seeing this when you first put the circle. But then if you start messing around with the delay, at some point you're gonna get the perfect circle mask that, you know, matches completely the gradient we are receiving here from the polarizer waveform generator. So yeah, in my case it's around 18. So once you do that and you have this completely perfectly calibrated, right? Like I'm gonna start messing around with the polarizer and I can see the modulation and the shape from the polarizer perfectly modulating the grid. It's kind of cool. So once you do this and have all your settings perfectly, you click here on the diskette icon and Max is gonna tell you that the settings have been saved, so you click OK. So now if I add a 3-channel output, it's gonna come with those settings by default, so I won't have to do that calibration ever again until I change the sound card or I change the scope, that you will need to go through this process again. But it's quite easy and you can save it and forget about it, so it's kind of cool. So once you've done that, you are ready to go and ready to mess around with the vector synthesis add-on for Vsynth. Okay, so now that we calibrate our system, I'm gonna start from scratch. So I'm gonna do the same of going to paste from Vsynth, but in this case I'm just gonna do Vsynth menu, and then I'm gonna do the same and add the VTR menu, which it's from vector instead of video synth. Cool, so from the globals, from the traditional Vsynth menu, I'm just gonna add the render. And since we are not gonna be drawing anything in our renders window, I'm just gonna turn the visible off. I'm turning it on already. Then I'm gonna add the 3-channel output from the vector synthesis library, which is under globals. And as you can see, both menus are kind of like the same. We have globals, we have generators, modules that only work with the brightness chain, and then we have processors, and then spatial processors, like here, like in Vsynth, exactly the same. So yeah, I'm just gonna add the 3-channel output. I'm gonna turn it on. As you can see, this is all the same, and I'm gonna add the raster module, which is the first module from the generators. I'm also gonna go to globals and add a preview, which also accept X and Y signals. And remember, whatever is coming out from the left outlet, it's XY. And it's very important, you know, that you just hover your mouse on the outlets and inlets, because they all tell you what they do, and everything has a help file. So remember all that it's exactly the same as Vsynth in that sense. So from the left outlet, it's coming out the XY, and I'm gonna be using brightness, so I'm just gonna grab the signal coming out from the middle outlet and send it also to the output and also to the second inlet of the preview. And I'm gonna put the preview over here and make it bigger than the one that comes with the 3-channel output. Cool. So what we need to do here is start modulating everything. So let's see what we have in the inputs. We have X modulation, control, and the modulation can be a texture or a signal. So this is X modulation, this is obviously Y modulation, and this is brightness modulation. But there is a really cool thing about all these generators, that is that all of these inputs are pre-patched. So whatever is coming to the most left input is also going to the other two, except if you connect something else. So let me show you that by adding two polarizers. So I'm gonna add a preview. So as you're seeing, I connect something to the X modulation, but it's also going to the brightness, and we can notice that because now the brightness is being modulated. And I'm gonna connect this now to the brightness. So since I'm sending pretty much the same signal to both inlets, the result is the same. But what happened if I, for example, change the brightness for polar? So now I'm visualizing the circle in the brightness because I'm sending that signal. So this polarizer waveform generator is replacing the pre-patch signal that it's coming from the X modulation. Actually, if I unplug this, you will see that it's going back to the texture coming out from this polarizer waveform generator. So what happened now with this signal? Well, this signal is still modulating X and Y. So if I change the number in the XM attenuator, I just start modulating, and the same it's gonna happen with the Y modulation, right? Because this is still going to X and Y. And let's do the opposite. I'm just gonna put the circle here and put the stripes here. So now we are making our displacement or distortion or XY modulation with the circle and modulating the brightness with the stripes. And I'm gonna delete this again, maybe also this, and I'm just gonna keep the circle for everything. So now the circle, since I'm connecting it to the X modulation in and there's nothing connected in the Y and brightness, the circle is modulating everything. So there's some things we can do here also in the raster, and I'm gonna turn this modulation of XY off one sec. We can invert and I'm gonna turn off the speed. So we can invert brightness as well from here. Okay, so yeah, besides X and Y modulation and like the brightness modulation here and some options we can change the amount of lines, right? So we can change how the raster it's built, if with parallel lines or with zigzag pattern. We can also increase the lines while being zigzag, diagonal. We also can change the speed. We also have this kind of rotation. But yeah, that's pretty much the raster. Let's move forward to the grid that we were using before. This works in the same way, but the only difference is that makes a grid, right? And same. Inversion of the brightness modulation, X and Y displacement, amount of lines basically, and right, more lines. We have also speed for both X and Y, so we can do these animations inside the grid itself, like the grid is moving, and also that 3D kind of illusion. So that's the grid. Then we have the Poly-raster, which is the same, but it generates polygons. So it starts with like 3 vertices, but you can add more, right? And then you have like cycles, so that's like the amount of repetitions of the circle you have. And that's also pretty cool. We're gonna see some examples. And also remember, every time you can access the help files and everything. And actually I should have opened maybe the grid. These are just like standard, pretty easy. But for example, if you go to audio to texture, you know, this help file is not only more complex, but also it's like more inspirational. So that's why always check the help files, because there's some like gems sometimes in those. Cool. So that's the Poly-raster, which is kind of awesome. I'm gonna show you a really cool example later with that one. So we have noise generator, quite awesome, I would say. So if you just connect the X and Y, you get this crazy line animation changing its position all the time. That's because it has the animation toggle turned on. You can turn it off. So, and as you can see, the speed now it's like wide, so that's like, it's not gonna change anything. That's like the speed of the animation. But basically you can also trigger that by hitting here or sending a bang to the generator. You can change the amount of points. But it gets really awesome when you start using brightness output of this module, which is actually like blanking the signal already, so you will get rid of the line in between the points and get actually points. So let's do that by connecting the cable and then changing the smooth value. And yeah, suddenly you have like only dots and you can animate them. And then there's a really cool toggle here which change from 2D to 3D. But first I'm gonna toggle these ones, which are like some fixed rotations I add to this. But as you see, since it's 2D, it's like the points are in a plane. But if you click on 3D, now the points have also a random 3D position, and the illusion, it's really cool. And actually you can zoom in here and like be immersed in those points. And if you add more points, it kind of looks really awesome, like some kind of like galaxy or something. Right, so with the brightness modulation, this module becomes like really powerful. So yeah, so that's the noise. Ooh, the outline. I love the outline. Well, you saw already the outline in the presentation. So I'm just gonna put the camera one sec. Or actually, no, I'm just gonna put the sources and put a video. So yeah, the outline is quite easy. Basically, it takes video and speeds X, Y in the left output, brightness, which actually is blanking in the middle, and the sync also. So that's what you get. You can change the band. So now we can see like the whole thing. You can choose the band, the brightness band. So yeah, that's cool. Then you can also change the detail of that outline. I'm gonna leave it in 99, that seems okay. And then we can send the brightness to modulate, and basically we can change, we can see it's the same. We are basically blanking the signal between the points that are far away, so we get that. So that's honestly really cool. And then the sync basically allows us to use the texture to audio module. So I'm just gonna show it this because I forgot to mention it before. So the texture to audio takes the sync of the modules and then it takes a texture. And it's very useful for making the audio that it's coming out now from the texture to audio compatible with the XY that is coming out from the same module. So for example, I don't know, if I want to, and I'm gonna go ahead and use the displacement module one sec. Like if I wanna displace scale, for example, with the signal, right? now I can do, like if I use a different kind of sync, like if I use, for example, the sync from the raster, this is gonna look different. See, now the displacement is not the same. You can work with this in a creative way, definitely, but if you want, like for example, displace the outline generator with a sine wave, you will need to do the texture to audio, because this one doesn't have modulation inputs, as you can see. So yeah, well, that's the way you do it. You grab the sync and you sync whatever video it's coming in to the outline XY coordinates, and then you can use that signal to displace the outline. And yeah, basically that's what I'm doing here. But yeah, let's forget one sec about this, but the sync, it's pretty much in all the generators, and it's for doing these kind of things. But yeah, so this is the outline. So what's next? Sketcher. So this module allows you to make GIFs. So if I connect XY, I get this square, and I can start drawing, and yeah, it's gonna draw the same thing in the scope. If I plug the brightness, I'm just gonna well, basically blank the signals that we were seeing before. And also I have a sync, so I can also do the displacements as I showed before. But there's more things you can do here. If you click on this arrow, there's also some previews, so you can turn on off the brightness to see what part of the drawing are you blanking or which one you're not. So you know, this module, it's not complex, but it has some options, like this first icon, erase everything, right? Then, and this is the like animation part. So the plus, add a frame. This is the frame counter here. So now frame 0, it's the empty canvas. Then I can draw something and add a frame by hand. That's my second frame. I can click on this pen over a film icon, and this is gonna grab a frame automatically every time I click. And this one, the circle icon, it's the best one of all. It's gonna automatically record frames while I'm drawing. So once I have, well, 24 frames, in total I think it's 240 frames. Basically, you have a menu here, which it's called animation, and you do forward, and well, you get the GIF, and you have like different playbacks, like palindrome, so it goes up and down. You can change the speed of the animation. If I close the previews, the animation happens in the same display or in the same canvas. If I keep drawing, I still adding frames, and the animation automatically adapts, which is kind of cool. And if I hit refresh here, boom, everything's gone. So I'm gonna keep focusing a little bit on the drawing aspect, because yeah, we have that, but we can change then the brush width. Boom, that's kind of cool. And then you can also erase. So if you grab, well, I mean, obviously if you click here, you erase everything, but also you can click on the eraser icon and you get this blue square, and I'm actually gonna maybe increase the width of the eraser, and yeah, we can erase. And when you are in eraser mode, you cannot save frames. Let's actually like add a frame and record something, I don't know, some spiral, something silly. And see that I keep recording frames, and I can stay 1 point and save some frames there, and that's gonna be reflected in my animation. Boom, let's do something like that. That's really cool. And also, obviously, since this is modular, you can just like make another one and then crossfade between them and do some more complex things. But in this version, at least, there's no way to save these drawings, so every time you use the sketcher, you will lose your animations and everything. Probably, I still have a lot of space in the left toolbar of the menu, so I probably will add options to save frames, to export animations, so and also load them, so it's more performable um, and shareable as well. So yeah, that's the sketcher. So then we have the cube. As the name suggests, it's just a cube. It has a sync output, so you can modulate the cube as I showed before with the texture to audio way. So by default it's rotating, so as basically these three icons are the rotation, the auto rotation on off. And so if I turn them all off, the three number boxes in the last row control the rotation for each axis. But once I turn on the rotation, these num boxes turn to be the speed of rotation now. So they change depending on their mode. Then you have scale modulation, so you can send a signal to it, not a texture. And I don't know if yeah. So if I click here, have that. And then I have like position and obviously the refresh rate of the cube. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just a cube. You can still like apply some processors, like I don't know, just very simple. Once I already show like the fisheye, I can still add this stuff to it and modify it or modulate it a little bit, but yeah, it's just a cube. And then, well, the text generator, which there's two ways of making text. One, if it's using this module, which allows you to have 3 layers of text at the same time. And yeah, you can write stuff. But also, and you can see this in the help file of this module, which you can use basically the title generator from Vsynth plus the outline generator in order to get like different fonts and stuff like that, because the text generator from the vector synthesis modules, it has just like one font and everything, so it has less possibilities but also has its own bio. So there's two ways of making text right now. Oops, this goes here, and let's do 99 here. I don't know, and put whatever. So it does change the font and everything, so it's really cool to also have this, have the refresh rate of everything. Anyway, two ways of making text. Then XY Compose. So let's just do the help files maybe from now on. So XY Compose basically grab the X and Y signal, right, and compose it into a 3-channel signal, right? So whatever is coming out now from the XY Compose is just X, Y, and brightness all at the same time. So for example, the crossfade, even though it can work with XY signals alone, once you put the brightness in, it, and actually, you know what, I'm just gonna copy paste this whole thing. So once you put, as I was saying, so I have a crossfade here, I'm crossfading between the raster and the cube, okay? And the cube, it's not connected to any brightness modulation, so internally the XY Compose have a full brightness signal. So that's why this is working without having a brightness signal going in the XYB Compose. But basically, like if I take actually the XYB Compose out of the equation, and instead of crossfading between the shapes, both of them are in the screen at the same time. As you can see, I can change only the rate of change between the shapes right now, because alpha and this slider are grayed out, so they don't really seem to be working. But if I put a 3-channel signal, as you can see now, the alpha and the crossfader are performable. So for example, if I click on alpha, what I can do now is alpha blend between the two shapes. So when one is decreasing its brightness, the other one is increasing it, and vice versa. So that's really awesome, and you can still morph between them. So yeah, basically you wanna compose if you wanna do crossfades or mix, like morphs or mix between shapes. So you compose the whole figure, let's say you want, and then you just merge them together in the screen by using the crossfader. So yeah, that's the XY Compose and the crossfader as well, which has a cool health file as well with like 3 presets. We can go through this patch also. This is called the Infinity Q. It's one of the example patches that comes in the launcher, so we are gonna go through this also later. So then scale and bias is just like a multiplier and an addition on the brightness signal. We are now in the brightness modules, the ones that only works with the brightness signal. So well, the edge fade, it's awesome. Also allows you to erase flybacks. So I'm just gonna copy paste these. And okay, so to do this actually better, I'm just gonna unplug the brightness. The edge fade also has an internal full brightness signal, as you can read here. So what I wanna do is get rid of all the ringing that it's around the edges of my grid. So basically, if I connect the sync to the edge fade, right, and I start fading from the edges, so this is left, right, top, and bottom, I basically, get rid of the edges, and I can do that for the 4 of them, or just in this case, I'm just gonna hit bang here to trigger this message and externally control the num boxes. So as you can see, I erase the edges now, and that's kind of cool because I can mix these with other brightness modulations as I was doing in the beginning. Let's put this in the default values and connect the brightness modulation signal that it's coming out from the grid generator into the edge fade, right? And we have that. And now we can still erase the edges, so we can mix, or like edge fade, and now we can like mix now with another shape. Anyway, this is like super powerful to have the edge fade for like refining our shapes. So what else? And then we have the merger, the brightness merger. I think I'm also just gonna open the help file of this one and gonna copy paste it. So basically you are merging all the brightness signals into one to modulate the brightness with all of them at the same time. Also gonna put a 3-channel output. Okay, so as you can see now, whatever it's, so this is the signal or the image without the brightness modulations. It's just this photograph with all the traces between the points. So what I did first was to connect these, the brightness that it's coming out from the outline, so I get rid of the trace between the points. But then I also want to do some edge fade and use this texture that is coming out from the polarizer as the brightness modulation. So using the brightness merger allows me to combine these three brightness modulation signals into one. So as you can see now, if I change here at the bottom, I can reveal the image, which is being modulated in the brightness by the polarizer, right? And also with the blanking that it's coming out from the outline generator itself. So yeah, brightness merger, if you want to do more complex brightness modulations, or for example, wiping, right? But the wipe reveals a signal that it's also being brightness modulated. So yeah, you can use the brightness merger for doing that kind of stuff. All right, so Degrader. Well, Degrader is kind of like a pixelator kind of a thing, or a beat crusher if you want it. So we have a cube, right? And then I'm sending that to the degrader, and the degrader has a wet dry slider. So I really like to use with the cube, I really like to put the dry wet slider in just like in the middle. And then so we can change the like amount of resolution that cube will have by itself, or use this lock icon to lock the Y steps with the X slider, so I can move, so I can switch both of them at the same time. Pretty simple module, but useful. Then we have the cropper, which is like the edge fade, but without the brightness modulation. As you can see, all these modules accepts only X, Y, and Control in. So yeah, I'm just gonna actually. So yeah, basically we start like fading from right, bottom, left, or top. But in this case, we are gonna see a line because it's like we are clipping the signal. So it's gonna be different than the edge fade, obviously, but that's the way you can crop your image. And then we enter in the spatial transformation module. So trans and scale, pretty easy, just scale up and down and offsets the image. Then we have flip and swap, which flips coordinates, and maybe I can add here like the raster. So invert X, flip or invert Y, and then swap the coordinates. Then we have the stretcher, which it's kind of like the scale, but independently for X and Y, and also it implements scale modulation, X and Y modulation with audio signals. So yeah, you can stretch it, right? Or click the lock and then just scale it. So this could be a way also of scaling your image with modulating signals. But we can use the displacement, which is like a merge of all of that and more, because you also have rotation. So you have displacement, like XY offset, you have scale, and then you have rotation. The rotation, it's always going to be from the center. And then you have all the modulation inlets for all of them, as we saw. And you know, for example, here I'm modulating the cube with some like audio signals I put here in these with patchers, and yeah, so it's like a ping pong with this like distorted cube. What else? Then, well, fisheye, I already showed. It's just a fisheye. Twirl, it's just a twirl. I also already showed this in previous videos, so, but basically it's a twirl, and then you can just rotate everything. And then last but not least, we have the Z displacement, which I think a lot of people is gonna like it. I am going to add here a sources modules again, and I'm gonna change my video for I'm just gonna leave this. So I'm gonna put my raster in the set displacement, and then since I'm using the raster, I'm just gonna send the video into here and use the brightness signal in order to modulate the set axis, right? And then I can use also this to send it to the brightness, and we have something like that. I might increase the brightness a little bit. But yeah, we can rotate here our kind of like root Etra kind of a thing, and this work in the same way as the cube. When they are in auto rotate mode, we just control the speed with those knobs. So you can rotate by hand or just like put the auto rotate, and then you have like set and also offset, but the idea is to use the set modulation. And also something you can do here, and I might put the camera actually, I think it's gonna be better. And a trick I know for the camera is actually putting like a blur and a displacement to like zoom in into my face features and don't get all like the noise from the background. Okay, that's a lot of distortion though, so I can see me. There we go. And I'm gonna zoom in into my face so you think this is so much better. Those are my glasses. That's great. So yeah, it just distort a little bit there and take the scale initial point down. Yeah, and you kind of get the root Etra thing, and with some more stuff you can also displace from here as well. And then yeah, you can rotate this, right? And also what you can do, well, obviously you can use a different signal for the brightness, but for the displacement itself, if you don't want, because whatever is coming out from here goes from 0 to 1, and maybe you want to use this as a bipolar modulation. So if you go to the brightness processors, you can use the scale bias, and to transform this signal into in between -1 and 1, just scale this by 2 and put this in -1. And now if you, the only way to notice this is by rotating it. Like that's -1 1, this is 0 1, this is polar, this is bipolar. So you know, you can still do all this stuff. Here is the health file. It goes in through everything I've just said. So yeah, remember always to check this out. Cool. So let's just jump into the example patches I'm gonna share with you. So they are all in the launcher, but I don't know, I'm in an M2 machine and I tried this in an older machine and it didn't work at 60 FPS. So I'm also sharing these patches independently. But I mean, they are in the launcher. So if you go to lessons and you go to vector launcher, it will open this with a bunch of tabs. And as you can see, first tab is the calibration, but since it's already calibrated, we can just like bypass this tab. Second tab, Spiky Blobs. So this is the Spiky Blobs. I made these this patch quite some time ago, and I actually shared a video on how to make it, but it's with the alpha version. So, but you might want to check it anyways. It's called like doodling vector synthesis with Vsynth. Um, it's kind of cool. Then, oh, we have another preset here, which will change the pixelation factor and send everything like inside. So it's kind of like an implosion, kind of a particle. Yeah, awesome. So then the other example is the SimpleRaster plus mask. So basically, yeah, it's if I put here the operation 2 in pass, you will see it's just the raster um, with the camera going to the 3 modulators. So obviously it's also going to the brightness. So that's why in the screen you can see me. Here I'm just like adjusting the blur in the scope itself, so you can see me with more definition. But you know, it's more blurry. I mean, it's sometimes you want to mess around with the blur, sometimes you just want to leave it like super sharp. But anyway, it's just the raster. Then I applied, I made the mask differently. Instead of merging, I can do the same thing using the brightness merger, but I just did it with Vsynth in this case, just multiplying the circle, and I get the the radial mask on the raster and the brightness modulation of the camera as well. And we have some more presets. Now I'm also using radial waveform generator to make some displacement, like some ripple displacement in my raster. So third preset, go more into that, have more. This one is cool. And then, well, I put to rotate everything. So I'm also doing some displacement modulation in the set axis and putting everything to rotate. So after this simple raster, we have the Radial Raster example patch, and you can see that this raster, it's made with a Poly-raster as I showed before, and yeah, just like made out of circles, but the texture are still mapping like Cartesian way, so we can see my face still perfectly. There's some other things I'm doing here, like well, I mean, you can change the edge fade, and I was using the edge fade to get rid of this line you can see from the middle. That's quite a bright spot there, so yeah, basically just get rid of that. But also, I mean, you can use what was left, right, top, bottom here, make something different, but you can still use it, right, to make like clockwise like wipes and stuff like that, like clocks, or also about for making like wings, right? So yeah, a few presets here as well. This is just with the camera displacing the radial raster, and well, as you can see, I changed the demodulation to be bipolar before going to the C displacement. And the third okay, it's just the inversion. So the third preset is inverting the brightness modulation, as you can see. But check that I have two sources here, this feedback and the camera. So last preset is mostly for the feedback, and you can see it here. Like before, the camera was displacing the raster, now it's the feedback, and it's like a different thing. And same with first preset. So next we have like the Rutt Etra patch. Let's check it out. Basically I have like two sources, the circle and the camera, and crossfaders, so I can switch between what's modulating the brightness and what's modulating an XY and what's modulating the set displacement. And also I can change a little bit here, like brightness. So yeah, I have some presets here for making, yeah, so for example in here with the circle going to a pixelator, I'm creating the displacement, but then the brightness is being modulated by the camera. And I could mix them or just doing like this. So there's like a lot of things you can do. I'm just like showing a few basic examples. Right, basic or kind of basic raster scan processing here. Some distortions, you can still see me, but yeah, and I'm doing all that stuff with like the pixelator over here. Well, here other kind of distortion. In this case I'm using the circle for everything. Different shapes, but yeah, some basic like Rutt Etra kind of a thing in this patch. And as you can see, everything is like going in like progress of complexity. The next one is the one you saw in the beginning of this video, which is the raster plus the outlines. And as you can see, what I'm doing, it's basically composing my two images. One is the outlines with the brightness modulation, everything going to the XY compose. So some light conditions change, so that's why I'm having more a hard time now shooting the scope. But yeah, there I am, mixing both at the same time with the crossfader. And as you can see here, I'm mixing with the crossfader, right? So I'm seeing both of the things at the same time, because otherwise I would see one or the other, right? So I want to see both at the same time, so I'm crossfading between them very fast at 30 FPS actually, right? Boom. But then I'm just making the brightness pass. I'm not doing the alpha transition. As you can see, I'm not doing the alpha blend and leave it in the middle, or kind of in the middle, right? I could do this, and now they are more, the brightness of both signals are more average. So that's one way of doing it, but you can also just like turn off the alpha, and whatever brightness is going to the XY compose for both signals are just passing through, like crossfading between them without any other extra process like with the alpha transition. So yeah, we just leave it like that. It looks really sick. And yeah, and this is how the preview looks. Then the infinite terrain. This is a very popular patch, and yeah, so in this case I'm not using any Vsynth module, even though I can create some kind of like terrain noise with Vsynth modules, but just for the sake of this example, I'm just using here some noises that come with the GGL BFG Max object, and you can just change a few noise bases here and the animation speed and some stuff. So this is like the basic setup for the infinite terrain. Obviously right now it's not an infinite terrain. Second preset, now it's an infinite terrain. So basically from here to here, what I did was to rotate, right, or bring this here, and then do the scale modulation. So that's preset 2, preset 3, less of a hilly thing. So this is more like waves. This is more like a terrain, like a mountain terrain. Anyway, you can mess around with it. Oh, this one is cool. Also really sharp, and also like you can always change the amount of lines and all that stuff we have been seeing. So that's quite cool. Well, the brightness is like completely crazy right now, but and that's the infinity cube. We already saw this one, but yeah, basically you have the cube rotating, and inside you have the noise with the blanking. So we get the dots instead of the lines, which is preset 2. Actually, it's the same, but without the brightness modulation in the lines. Then preset 3, it's more like aesthetic. Already you have the cube, and surrounding the cube you have like all this space dust or something. And then everything inside, so you're inside the cube now and everything is rotating. And well, basically you have the cube, the noise generator, and the crossfade. It's very simple yet effective patch. Then we have like a fake occlusion kind of a thing. So I made this in 2 different ways for you to double check. So one way is composing in Vsynth and then use the outline generator, and for example, if I move the X of the circle that it's making the outline and the circle that it's making the fill, it's like I'm occluding, and it's like a one shape. But also I can move the circle fill and make some kind of like shadow as well. I mean, you can play around with this idea. And then if you crossfade all the way to the right, I have the same thing but built with the grid generator and the circle made with the Poly-raster Generator, and then crossfading both very fast to yeah, have them both at the same time. It's 2 different approach to get some similar effects. Obviously, if you move the outline of the circle here, you also need to move the brightness modulation to match. But yeah, same idea, different way of getting the same. 2 ways: one, compose with Vsynth and use the outline; the other, try to do it with the vector synthesis modules only, or almost only. And last but not least, last example is using OsciRender inside this. So you can load with this snippet I'm leaving here as many instances of OsciRender as you want. So I'm sending, and you can use it as a standalone and mix it with Vsynth stuff, or you can use it as a processor. I mean, you decide. But idea is that you load it, and I think I have it here. And then I can open the OsciRender interface. So in order to get the audio in, I can click here. As you can see, well, basically whatever I'm creating with Vsynth now is inside OsciRender, and yeah, I can just use OsciRender now to modulate my stuff. Or I can also use OsciRender to choose a 3D object, which I cannot do with Vsynth, and use it as a generator and then process that with Vsynth, or like crossfade between whatever is in OsciRender and Vsynth. I mean, point is, you can load as many instances of OsciRender as you want if you copy paste this. I'm not gonna make a module for this, especially because, well, basically because you can open the interface. But yeah, you can start also mixing everything. If you are using even another software for this, or if you want to put your modular synthesizer and modulate all the stuff with your audio or your music or whatever, you just use the audio ins and then just send those signals into the different modulation inputs, and yep, you're gonna be mixing your modular gear with Vsynth, with OsciRender. You can also use Osci Studio or whatever. I mean, you can route audio from anywhere if you are using like Soundflower or Black Hole or different virtual audio cables. So that was pretty much it. I think I went through all the stuff. I hope you enjoy this library and all these new features that were unlocked now. So yeah, have fun guys, have a great end of the year and see you soon.